Good morning. I would like to welcome you all to the fall reception of the Pourdavoud Center, which is being held virtually this year. The virtuality of it all allows us to welcome many guests globally, be it from the continent, the UK, or be it from the Middle East. I am very mindful that we are exceedingly privileged in the academia to be able to share our research, thoughts, and future endeavors at a time when many across the world are caught in the grip of existential problems facing food insecurity and, unfortunately, ravaging health issues. While we may not be able to relieve these plights, it still behooves us in the humanities to accentuate the need to engage globally, to remain culturally connected at a time when more myopic worldviews are gaining a foothold in the body politic. This communality we intend to emphasize by concentrating on our entangled past, hence the vision of a global antiquity emerging at UCLA under the stewardship of the Dean of Humanities, in which the Pourdavoud Center will engage while remaining steadfastly committed to its mandate to strengthen and champion the study of ancient Iran in the ancient world. We have a condensed program for the next hour and 15 minutes. And I would very much like to initiate our meeting today by introducing my dear colleague and friend, Professor David Skaberg, Dean of Humanities, who shall far more eloquently present UCLA Humanities vision on engaging our global world. Thank you so much. If I may.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rahim. As I think back on the beginnings of this center, I reflect that, the university is fundamentally about making connections, faculty connecting with students around the subjects of their studies, researchers who are connecting disparate facts from cultural history or from biology, from geology, as it may be. The university is a place where we draw things together. When the center was founded a few years ago, there were a few things that were quite clearly in focus for us. The importance of the ongoing research on the Iranian world, and the relevance of the fact that UCLA is situated in Los Angeles in the midst of a very strong community of people with long, deep heritages in Iran and long, deep interests in Iranian culture. During these years, the center has gathered momentum by building on those connections with the students through the various sorts of teaching we're doing on campus, connections with the surrounding community. I find those deepening in all of the most interesting ways. Connections with other centers around the world. And I think that was always built into the center as it was being designed in its initial vision. But I think our current moment has brought to the surface something that we could not have anticipated when we began some years ago. And that's the way that the center, especially through connections of the kind we're making here, through a screen, through digital means, becomes a place where people from every possible community of interest can connect with each other. And where we're able very easily to cross the kinds of dividing lines that otherwise threaten to separate us right now. There are people present today who are attending from far away. There are people in my classes right now who are attending class from the other side of the world. What we're able to do during this period of digital interaction is to look ahead to a time when the university and its research centers, including the Pourdavoud Center, will be connecting with publics worldwide. We'll be connecting with scholarly centers worldwide. We'll be interacting with a large network of learning, public learning that engages members of the public and scholars. And in some ways, we'll be leading that network. The Pourdavoud Center is extremely well set up right now to draw on the depth of scholarship at UCLA and across the University of California, and to maintain and deepen connections around the world. And I must say that as I look at some of the things that all of us are facing right now, I think that the scholarly connections, the continued cultivation of real understanding of other people at other times, a cultivation of the means of understanding that in the university setting is more important than ever. I think all of us are aware on this day that we are attending this gathering and celebrating this center at a moment when many of the things that surround us in our public life, both in this country and around the world, are in some ways shaken. The work of scholarship is also a work of maintaining memory, maintaining commitment to each other. And I'm very proud to see that this center is all well set up to carry on that work, hands and ties in every way. I must acknowledge that the creation of the center and the possibility of the development of this leading vision in the center is all due to the extraordinary generosity of Dr. Anahita Nafisi Lovelace and Jim Lovelace, who early on, through a long series of wonderful conversations, helped to develop the vision for this research center. They continue to be involved in thinking about how this center can achieve all of the potential that it has, and really kind of set a goal for the possibility of an academic research center at a great public university. And I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to work with both of you in conceiving this vision, bringing it along, working of course, very closely with Professor Shayagan all along the way. But it has been such a joy. And of course, it's, I think, like all acts of generosity, it's been inspiring in many ways and will continue to be inspiring. Just shortly after the creation of the center, we received a beautiful second gift for the support of the center, and that was the Morvarid Guiv Graduate Fellowship in Zoroastrian Studies, which was established by the family and trustees of Morvarid Guiv, Mina Surush, Sean Guiv, and Parvin Mazda. I'm not sure if they're present here today, but I want to express once again my great gratitude for this. The Pourdavoud Center is great in part because of its inclusion and recognition of the very diverse cultural past and makeup of the Iranian world. And I'm really proud that in this respect, too, the center is exemplary of what UCLA can do best. So thank you. Thank you to the donors who made this center possible. Thank you to you, Professor Shayagan, and thank you to all of the other UCLA staff and the public constituents of the center who are here expressing concrete support for the work of the center. Thanks very much, and I'm really looking forward to this year of Pourdavoud Center work. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. I want to start by thanking Dean Skalberg for your very kind remarks. And I have to say the feelings are mutual. Jim and I have so enjoyed the work that we've been able to do together. And we can't thank you enough for your vision, for what you've created, and the vision in terms of focus and interest in the world of antiquity and the appreciation of how important that is, and your commitment to the center and your engagement with the Pourdavoud Center is truly appreciated. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
And I also want to say a word about our leaders, Chancellor Block and Mrs. Block, who are doing such an amazing job of helping us through this pandemic, trying to be sensitive and mindful of the needs of the community of, I believe, over 46,000 people, or 86,000 people, including the staff at UCLA. So that is a remarkable feat. And I think we all are grateful for the wonderful leadership at UCLA. Chancellor Block, Mrs. Block, Dean Skalberg, and all the way with the department heads, and of course, Professor Shayagan, whom I'm going to talk about in just a minute. But I also want to right now just say a big thank you to all of our attendees. During turbulent times, such as the one that we're going through right now, continuity and a sense of community are ever so important. And it is heartwarming for Jim and myself to see that the work of the Pourdavoud Center has continued and expanded in many ways, as you will see, but also to have the engagement of the various constituents of the center, the faculty, the affiliate faculty, the board of advisors, all the scholars who have presented at the center for the past 3 years, and the students, the graduate students, the donors, the lay people who have attended the various conferences and workshops and talks that we've had. It is just so important to feel the presence of that community, and this virtual gathering of ours really speaks, it's a testament to that. So thank you for showing us your support. In many ways, we are really grateful that the center was founded in 2017, over 3 years ago. And in part because, of course, we had no way of knowing what was going to happen to the world, but the center did have a chance over the course of almost 3 years to get established at UCLA, to get established in Los Angeles, and to make connections with other institutions. And for that, I want to actually commend Professor Shoigan, who, as the inaugural director of the Pourdavoud Center, has done such an incredible job of bringing his expertise, his passion, and his love for the field, but also attracting and bringing to the center so many wonderful scholars who have given talks, and the center has sort of created an environment for wonderful interactions and dialogue. And looking into the future, I feel like those relationships that I think Rahim already had with many of the scholars around the world, that he has continued to nurture in the context of the Pourdavoud Center, are going to be really integral for the reasons that I think both Dean Skaberg and Professor Shoigan have already mentioned. Now, Rahim, I know that you would be the first to admit that you would not have been able to do this alone. You have a wonderful group of people working with you. Your assistant director, Marissa Stevens, the department, the development department for humanities, headed by Sarah Murphy and her team, your advisory board, your colleagues, your students, and all the speakers who have come, all the wonderful scholars who've come. Everyone has contributed greatly to the success of this center. And truly, Jim and I feel grateful to all that has transpired, and we look forward to what is to come. We're really sorry that we can't see all of you. It was kind of a bittersweet moment for me when I saw the names on the list of attendees, realizing that some of you I haven't seen for months. But I'm happy that we can gather in this fashion. And by virtue of this being a Zoom gathering, in fact, several of our family members and close friends and colleagues who might not have been able to attend otherwise were able to be with us. So that's a wonderful added bonus, if I may say. So with deep thanks, I'd like to turn it back to Professor Shoigan, who's going to be talking about what has transpired in the past year, what the work has been, it's been done at the center, and also talk about what is to come. And then we'll have the wonderful presentation by Dr. Mousavi, who has been at it for a long time, not because he's so old, but because he started so young. I learned in one of our brief exchanges that he actually used to go with his father, also an archaeologist, to these sites from when he was a very young boy. So he knows this stuff inside and out. Without further ado, here's Professor Shaivan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you. I would like to begin with thanking Dean Scaberg for his wonderful remarks, and most of all, acknowledge the benefaction of our wonderful donors, Dr. Anahita Lovelace and Jim Lovelace, without whom this entire enterprise would not have been possible. What has been so extraordinary and gratifying in our exchanges has been the fact that they remain engaged in the further development of this center. Their ideas, their vision is enriching us and determining future visions for the center, and I'm exceedingly grateful for that. I would also like to acknowledge the trustees of the Mousavi Trust, Dr. Mina Sarouche, Sean Give, and Pavin Mazde, who have helped us establish the Mousavi Graduate Fellowship in Zoroastrian Studies at the center in 2018, whose first recipient, 4 of them, we shall be introducing in a moment today. So again, my great thanks to all donors, our benefactors, Dr. Anaital Nafisi Lovelace, Mr. Jim Lovelace, and the trustees of the Mousavi Fund. Thank you so much. I would also like to acknowledge our engaged audiences for remaining with us, for still being interested in us. I would like to thank also our guest speakers for enriching in the past and also in the future our events, the superb board of advisors who keep us grounded, my dear colleagues, among them Dr. Adi Mousavi, and most of all, Dr. Marissa Stevens, the Associate Director of the Pourdavoud Center, and the wonderful staff in the Humanities Development, foremost among them, Sarah Murphy and the Humanities Group. So many thanks to all of them. We have we had a rather successful year despite the confinements, cutting it short. In the past year, we hosted obviously a number of scholars as part of our namesake Pourdavoud Center lecture series. We had 2 very successful conferences, international conferences, and a lecture series that is has a namesake to it. It is it's called after the great Iranist and Iranologist, the student of our great Pourdavoud, namely Dr. Yashater. So we had the Melamu project, which was hosted at UCLA and was over a number of days, some 25 speakers speaking over 3 days, the proceeding of which shall be published through the good graces of my dear colleague, Professor Robert Rohlinger at the Verlag der Österreichischen Akademie der Wissenschaften. And then we hosted another wonderful colleague of ours, the great and eminent archaeologist Daniel Potts from NYU. And Dr. Potts was the recipient of the SN Yashater Biennial Lecture Series. So he was able to reinitiate after a moment of the lapse of certain time the Yashater Lecture Series again at UCLA, and those lectures would be also published in a dedicated series coming forth with UC Press called Ancient Iran in the Ancient World, or Iran in the Ancient World. This lecture series, as well as the proceedings of the Melamu conferences, would be obviously published, but before being published, they have been videographed and have been posted on our website, and you can obviously be, you're able to visit them at any time. And the quality of the videography and the videos is such that they are citable. They have indeed a fixed URL at UCLA on our servers, and are hence citable as a source of scholarship. We, among other enterprises of last year, it behooves me to mention the so-called epigraphic field trip that we undertook with a number of graduate students, I think some 15 of them, and a number of faculty members, foremost among them my dear colleague at NALC, Dr. Kara Cooney. Professor Cooney was indeed the one who organized, together with Dr. Stevens, the wonderful field trip to Egypt that allows us to take and investigate the vestiges of Achaemenid presence in ancient Egypt. And we hope, were it not for the confinement, we had hoped, and we shall still persevere to hope, that we would indeed launch a multi-year research project aimed at inventorying Persian era vestiges in Egypt and gaining additional insight into the Achaemenid Empire's policy of religious tolerance and accommodation. So this is indeed just a hiatus in a longer process, and we will be indeed persevering to establish a type of mission in Egypt to capture all of these wonderful artifacts of Iranian presence and dominion in Egypt. I think the pictures that are being shown to you are showing some of our graduates and faculty at work. In the middle, you can see our most talented epigraphist, Dr. Winneman, reading hieroglyphs related to obviously the Persian Empire. And there are other pictures that are indeed self-descriptive. Allow me to give you some ideas about where we are headed and what we intend to do. I just mentioned the Morvarid Give graduate fellows. I would like to maybe just briefly introduce them before giving a synopsis of our vision for the years ahead. This year's recipients of the Morvarid Give Graduate Fellowship in Zoroastrian Studies are three students of the NELC department and a student of Indo-European Studies. The first one is Hong Yu Chen, who is studying a combined field of Egyptology and ancient Iran. Elizabeth Koch, who has not yet been able to join us, is a first-year graduate student who will be hopefully joining us this year once the confinement has abated. He also is part of Near Eastern Languages and Cultures, studying ancient Iranian studies in conjunction with Egyptology. Emma Peterson, second-year graduate student who is working already on Iranian glyptics, Achaemenid glyptics. So these are the images of on the seals of the Achaemenids, of the Achaemenid administration, and they obviously represent an imagery and symbolics that she is investigating, among other things. And Alex Roy, very gifted students of Indo-European Studies, who is studying Avestan and Old Persian. All of them shall be studying Avestan this year with me for two quarters and more next year, hopefully. And we are very indeed happy that they are the recipients of this year's Morvarid Give Graduate Fellowships in Zoroastrian Studies. Now, let us move into some of the things we intend to do in the future. As I mentioned to you, and I will begin with this again, the importance of establishing this video archive at UCLA and at the Pourdavoud Center. Maybe at the time we began doing so, it might have enticed a few smiles among colleagues because of the high production cost associated with them. But the idea, inspired, I must say, and admit, by similar attempts elsewhere, and foremost at the Collège de France, the intent of creating this video archive was to have professionally made citable research on videos with a fixed URL that would be maintained on UCLA servers, not on YouTube, and would be cited, can be cited as part of scholarship, and would be able to present in a different form, in different format, research that is just emerging prior to its being prior to being published or being indeed mentioned in writing elsewhere. So this is a means to connect to others, obviously, because we are inviting many to come to UCLA to hold these wonderful lectures. It is a way to connect with others, to allow them to participate in the events that we are creating, but also to create scholarship that is citable and visible elsewhere. And we will enhance these videos in the future with adding indeed subtext or subtitles to them, so they are possibly better disseminated for the usage of those who are not as dexterous in the comprehension of the English language. So this has indeed given us, we have been, and also with consultation with Dr. Anahita Lovelace as well as Jim Lovelace, we have been thinking about how to maintain the quality of these videos at a time when we have, obviously at the time when everybody's on Zoom. Zoom is wonderful to connect, but it has not and cannot maintain the qualities that we are intent to produce and post and disseminate. And as part of these discussions, and I'm again very grateful to both Anahita and Jim for providing us this feedback to prompt us to think more creatively about these things, we have been thinking about, since we cannot during the confinement period bring people to UCLA, we should take the cameras to them. So as part of this, we are initiating for this year a new let's say a new procedure. We will be holding our events on Zoom, but we will be also recording wherever the guest speakers are, their lectures independently by a camera crew that is going to be contracted by us to record this professionally, for us to edit and complement and enrich with slides as well as PowerPoints, and to post them again in the same vein as it has been the case before. So we will be continuing with the same same high quality production as we have done before. But this obviously creates a different opportunity as well, since we can create elsewhere those videos by contracting, by decentralizing our production, so to say. We can also create content elsewhere. So the idea is for next year, not only to do so, not only to contract videographers to record our guests at their home institutions, but also to try to create, in partnership with other universities and other centers for research, programming that is more local in its gusto. That is more geared towards the local audiences, and also takes into account the desires of local scholars, as well as what is foremost on their mind and their interest. So that in a certain sense, the Pourdavoud Center would become like a virtual hub in a number of select places to aid and sustain the study of ancient Iran by partnering with scholars and committee of scholars and institutions to create programming that is more foremost of interest to those localities, and allow to disseminate the vision of the Pourdavoud Center and the importance of ancient Iran in the ancient world elsewhere by accommodating, let's say, the local mental makeup. So this is our purpose, at least with respect to our programming for next year. All of this is going to lead, obviously, to a type of different programming. That is a programming that is geared towards a global audience, at the same time a programming that allows institutions that are interested in organizing events and lectures to be able to do so with our help, while we would benefit also from these productions and be able to post them as well on our websites. We also have for the coming years an extraordinary number of lectures, as I mentioned, programmed already. Those would be, some of them are, for example, and they are mostly around the publication of new work, new books and monographs. The first one will be by Professor Henrik Colburn, whose book on archaeology of empire and Achaemenid Egypt just came out. There are a number of other lectures around dynasties, the one by Dr. Bonner on Sasanian Iran, two more lectures on, this is a wonderful lecture by Dr. Marashi on the concept, on the notion of Zoroastrianism, the Parsi community in India, and the making of modern Iran, and also has a wonderful chapter on Pourdavoud himself, the great Ibrahim Pourdavoud, and his contribution to this, to the concept of Zoroastrianism and its reception in modern Iran. That is good, obviously. So if we can go back, this is a lecture that is going to be co-sponsored by the Program of Iranian Studies as well. And then we have a number of lectures on the Parthian Empire, one by Professor Overtoom, a wonderful new book called The Reign of Arrows on the first centuries of the establishment of the Parthian Empire, and much more. That will be. Thank you so much. Again, I should also mention this wonderful perspectives, this workshop on the papyrus Amherst 63, which is a papyrus that has possibly emerged during Achaemenid Empire and is of much importance to biblical studies. And that will be one of our first workshops for this for this fall quarter. The rest of our programming shall be posted obviously online, and you can partake of it in more detail later on. I would like to return now to our research. I mentioned the programming, which is obviously interlinked with research, the programming that we shall try to localize, to take into other places, but also our extraordinarily robust publication agenda for this year. These are obviously going to be a number of things, namely the proceedings of past year's conferences. One is, as I mentioned, the Melamu Symposium, which would be published at the Verlag der Österreichischen Akademie der Wissenschaften. Another one is the Ehsan Yarshate lecture series, which is going to be part of our Iran and the Ancient World series with UC Press. We have a number of edited volumes, the Sasanian companion volume, the Parthian Empire volume with De Gruyter and Blackwell. So we have a long list of publications which are going to be led under the auspices of the Pourdavoud Center. And also, most importantly, the 2 years conferences in conjunction with the Getty Research Institute, which would be led, which would be published with Getty Press this year, hopefully before, well, this year it's going to be initiated, and then maybe next year it will appear and be published. So the 2 years collaboration with the Getty Research Institute and the Getty Museum would result in a publication with the Getty Press, and encompasses the proceedings of the of conferences over 2 years, and some 60 papers will be encompassed in there. Now, allow me to go back on another aspect of the research. So we covered our programming. As I mentioned to you, we shall be decentralizing our purposes. We shall try to create programming elsewhere so that that dissemination of the philosophy of the Pourdavoud Center is better served. We will have a very robust publication endeavor and this year. But I would also like to come back on other aspects of our research. That was the mandate that was given to us when we first established the Pourdavoud Center. The mandate was to establish two things. One was to maybe create a database around Iranian archaeology, and also to have a dedicated series for the publication of ancient Iranian material, as well as monographs. We are in the process of establishing the series as part of UC Press. called Ancient Iran, Iran in the Ancient World. And with the second demand, namely to create that database on Iranian archaeology, we have also been working on this under the leadership of Dr. Ali Mousavi for the last 3 years. What has been done is a large endeavor to bring together data under the terms gateways to Iranian archaeology, which encompasses several subfields. The most important of them is going to be the Archaeological Gazetteer of Iran, about which Dr. Mousavi is going to speak in a moment, which is a large repositorium or almost an encyclopedic endeavor to map all the different sites, archaeological sites of Iran, to provide up-to-date research on them, to allow us to access the publications undertaken as part of excavations by Iranian archaeologists, to have access to them, to have abstracts in English of these publications, and really in due time to create a large repository of Iranian archaeology that would be accessible to all. So the same philosophy of dissemination and open access to this is going to also animate this gateway or this gazetteer, in a sense that the gazetteer will be allowed, or actually otherwise, students and archaeologists upon our invitation would be allowed to enrich this gazetteer by dedicated interfaces throughout the world, and would be able to enrich it so that it becomes a phenomenon for the entire Iranian archaeology community throughout the world. And again, this is the same philosophy as I mentioned, the same philosophy that is animating things that we are doing with respect to our programming. I should also mention that this philosophy carries also well into our publication purposes. The series with UC Press that we are establishing is going to be, after a short moratorium of maybe a year, also open. It will be an open access. It means publications there would be made available to students elsewhere in the world, so that these monographs could be indeed partaken of without any costs by the larger Iranist community and scholarly community elsewhere as well. So without further taking away from the extraordinary intricacies of the gazetteer and the gateways to Iranian archaeology, allow me now at this stage to introduce my dear and good colleague, Dr. Ali Mousavi, who would tell us more about the gateways to Iranian archaeology and what it encompasses, and specifically for today would speak about the Archaeological Gazetteer of Iran. If I may indeed introduce Ali. Yes. Thank you very much, Ali, and I shall not indeed further impose upon our audiences and give you the floor to indeed speak about the gazetteer and the Iranian, the archaeological gateways. Thank you so much. Thank you indeed.
Thank you so much, and thank you for granting me a few minutes of this webinar to talk about our archaeological projects. And in fact, the late Ibrahim Pourdavoud was the professor of Avestan, my father's professor of Avestan in the University of Tehran in the 1960s. And I'm familiar with his name, even character, and his work through my father. And I'm very proud to serve in this center that's named after him. Let me share my screen now. And the idea for having this project, the Iranian Archaeology Gateways, goes back to 3 years ago, and has its origin in a series of informal, friendly discussions and talks with Professor Rahim Shaigan. who has since been the driving force behind this project. And he has been exceedingly supportive of the project, and I'm grateful to him. I would like also thank my dear colleague here at the center, Dr. Marissa Stevens, for her kind assistance in both academic and administrative and even practical matters. The Iranian Archaeology Gateways is in fact an umbrella for a number of other projects, as you will see. We have a digital image library project, we have the Persepolis Glyptic project, and we have a digitization of archaeological literature in Persian, and finally the Archaeological Gazetteer of Iran, and they're all interrelated. So I'm going to show you a series of slides regarding this project, and then I will switch to our website. The Digital Image Library project, we are very lucky to be able to acquire, of course, with the consent of David Stronach's daughter and the British Institute of Persian Studies, all of his photographic and visual documents. A few words about David Stronach. David Stronach was the first director of the British Institute of Persian Studies that opened in Tehran in 1961. He was one of the pioneers of modern archaeological research in Iran. He's very well known for his excavations at the World Heritage Site of Pasargadi, and also the important Median site in Western Iran, Tepe-Nushijan, where he excavated probably one of the earliest Iranian temples, and also his excavations at the famous site of Hekatonpylos, Shahr Kumis. And I had the privilege to study with him at UC Berkeley and learn a great deal from him. He has left thousands of slides, transparency slides, negatives, black and white photos, line drawings, and field notes. And we are going to get all of that material, with the blessing of his daughter Karen, and also the British Institute, and we are going to digitize all of them, and we are going to make them available at the Pourdavoud Center website, free access. So this is the first line of this project. A similar collection of photographic materials is also available for us, and this is the Richard Fry Image Library. Richard Fry was a renowned historian of ancient Iran, one of the pillars of Iranian studies of the 20th century, longtime professor at Harvard, and he bequeathed all of his visual documents, slides, I believe, and black and white photos to Professor Shaigan. So we have this material also, and we are going to make the collection accessible, free access to the world of scholars and students of Iranian studies and Iranian archaeology. So the second project within the gateways is the Persepolis Glyptic project. The glyptic evidence is preserved in the form of impressions of seals on some of the Persepolis clay tablets. In the 1930s, a German archaeologist working at Persepolis discovered two collections of clay tablets. Most of them are written, inscribed tablets. And a large number of them bear seal impressions. Even though we don't have the actual seals, we have their impressions. And they are a mine of information, iconographic information for the study of the Achaemenid ancient Persian Empire. So the scholar who studied this material in detail is Professor Mark Garrison, who has kindly agreed to give us all of his digitized seal collections, or the digitized seal collection. So we are in conversation with Professor Garrison, one of our first-year students, graduate student, Emma Peterson, who has studied with Professor Garrison, will facilitate and the continued research on this collection here at UCLA. And I believe initial inquiries into the transfer of the data files and the secure storage of the digitized materials have been made in coordination with HumTech and the UCLA library. So this collection we will acquire and will be online at the Pourdavoud's website, the center's website, in the future. Another project we are dealing with is the digitization of archaeological literature in Persian. The number of archaeological activities in Iran has remarkably increased in the past 30 or 40 years, including the discovery of some important sites and artifacts, to the point that no printed publication is able to absorb and deal such a growing volume of information. And the continuing developments of archaeological activities in Iran have led to the accumulation of hundreds of records, unpublished archaeological reports, published reports and books, pamphlets, memos, and photographs. So one of our projects within the gateways is to capture and organize and present this important body of information and make them available to the specialized and interested audience, researchers, scholars of the Iranian studies, archaeology of Iran, or the archaeology of the ancient Near East in general. And this is tightly connected. This is related to our archaeological gazetteer of Iran, of which I'm going to talk. Now let me go online, and I had to stop sharing. Sorry for this transition. Here we are. Iran is estimated to have over 300,000 archaeological sites, dating from the Old Stone Age all the way down to medieval times. I exchanged a few emails with Iranian colleagues who are who have been creating for years now, for 20 years now, an archaeological map of Iran. Their estimate is 500,000 sites, and they have so far detected and recorded some 80,000 archaeological sites. These are just GPS coordinates. And these sites range from prehistoric caves, shelters, and campsites to mounded multi-period sites and monumental complexes, like the one you're looking at, Persepolis. So the goal of this archaeological gazetteer, which is in fact an online encyclopedia of Iranian archaeological sites, is to cover all Iranian archaeological sites, regardless of their present-day location within the political borders of Iran. So we are expanding our vision and scope to other countries wherever there are Iranian sites, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, Afghanistan, or Central Asia, or even the Persian Gulf region. This is a pilot site, and that we created. This is a functioning pilot site that has not been advertised because we are in the process of creating a new architecture, creating a new website for the gazetteer that's going to be launched hopefully by the end of this year, by December. And I'll show you a teaser of the new website, the future website. But let's go over some of the main components of this gazetteer. We try to make it straightforward and easy to navigate. That's the main idea. I know that there are other sites, but the main goal, one of the main goals, was the ease of navigation and understanding of this site. Let me go back. I'm sorry for this transition. I need to go back to my PowerPoint slides once more and to share it. Here we are. This is the map of Iran, but once again, our scope is larger than the present-day borders of Iran. A word of acknowledgement, recognition of the past work. And I think I should mention Louis Vandenberg's Archaeology de l'Iran ancien, a book he published in 1959. Vandenberg was a renowned Belgian archaeologist who spent most of his career, all of his professional career, in Iran. He spoke even the language. He traveled extensively in Iran in the 1950s and 60s. And he published probably what's called at that time the Bible of Iranian archaeology in French in 1959, in which he cataloged a large number of archaeological sites. And his method was, he went region by region, province by province. The second endeavor is Nusratullah Meshkati's list of the historical sites and ancient monuments of Iran. He single-handedly cataloged some 600 sites, and he published them in 1966. And that was an impressive work or publication at that time. In the 1960s, when the British Institute of Persian Studies opened, they launched the journal Iran, which is one of the I think one of the most one of the best journals of Iranian studies, including the archaeology of Iran. And Stronach, as the director of the British Institute, launched a series of publications within the journal called Survey of Excavations in Iran. And this is another mine of information about archaeological activities year by year between 1965 and 1978. It stopped in 78 because of the revolution. Later, much later, Dr. Vesta Curtis and Dr. Sinton Simpson resumed the work in the form of archaeological news from Iran in 1997, I believe. But that was a short-lived series of news, and it disappeared in the early 2000s. A word of acknowledgement about other archaeological websites in which you find information on some Iranian archaeological monuments and remains. But once again, the main focus and scope of these sites are not archaeology or archaeology of Iran. Let's take, for example, Iranian Hellenica. That's done by one of my teachers and mentors, Dr. Antigone Zornatsi in Greece. This is a very good website, but still the scope is very Greek or Greco-centric, even though she has cataloged a number of important sites that are related to the archaeology and history of ancient Greece, like Persepolis or Pasargadae. The second site is achemenet.com, launched by Pierre Briand, in which you find it's a site dedicated to the history and history of the Achaemenid Empire, or the world of the Achaemenid Empire, in which you find maybe a few entries on archaeological sites such as Susa or Ain Manawir in Egypt. But once again, this is not a dedicated site to the archaeology of Iran. And we have other examples like Pleiades is a very good site to navigate. Iranica Online, the website of the Encyclopedia Iranica, in which one finds entries on some of the archaeological sites. And I should mention the website of the Oriental Institute. It's a very good source of information, visual information mostly, on the site of Persepolis, which was excavated. The Oriental Institute sponsored the excavations at the site in the 1930s. Now, let's go back to the website. And this is our website. Once again, this is a pilot website. It hasn't been advertised. And it has a number of components. I think the first component I would like to go over quickly is the map. We have created an ArcGIS map on which we are going to plot our archaeological sites. The map is equipped with filters. You can filter whatever you would like to see based on historical periods or geographical regions. And you can navigate, go to these websites or click on these websites. It's clickable. The second component, probably one of the most components of the website, is its catalog of sites. In this catalog, you will see hundreds or thousands of archaeological sites. There is no limit. We're going to cover all archaeological sites. And we have listed so far a number of sites, as you can see. In the historical periods, it says sites that fall within the range of the Iranian empires, from the Medes to the Sasanians. That was this first initial phase of the gazetteer. And some of them are active, like the first one. Let me show you an example. This is each site has an entry, complete entry. You have subtitles giving name, historical periods, location, history and description, and archaeological exploration of the site, and then a bibliography. There's no limit to include images here and there, as you can see, and you can go to these images and move through the images. Let me show you another site is Jorge, the famous Parthian site of Jorge in central Iran. Same format as you see. And then in the bibliography, we are going to put links to the digitized references, like this one, for example. So you have access to the digitized, mostly in Persian, literature of those sites. They're available, and they will be made available shortly. Okay. Let me go back, for example, and show you another site, and that is the site of Kalezohak. Not all of them have entries, but some of them have entries, like Kalezohak. This one, which is once again a Parthian 1st century, 2nd century castle in Western Iran. And then the site will have another section. So here's we have a storage for digitized publications, and we have listed so far some of them. Same thing, you can go to these digitized publications through the catalog of sites or through this section, digitized publications section. This is a repository of digitized publications and archaeological literatures, like this one, for example. You click on it, it takes you to an appropriate box in which this publication is stored, and you can navigate and see the whole publication. For these publications in Persian, there is no copyright, fortunately for us. This is why we are digitizing and putting almost all of them online, make them available to scholars. And finally, you have what's called online resources, a list of other related websites, like Achaemenid, for example, I mentioned, Bibliographia Iranica, Encyclopedia Iranica, and then you click on these, and it takes you to the relevant website. So this is our pilot website. It is functional. And now I'm going to show you just a teaser of the future design, which is this one. So our future website, it's a catalog of sites. It's one of the sections of the future website. Will look like this. So you have the name, the full name here, the map, and you can jump or toggle to different sections in the entry, historical description, series of photos, archaeological exploration, bibliography. And what is very good about the new design is that you'll be able to download the entry. Okay, so you can print or keep the entries for your future studies and records. And this website will be launched hopefully by the end of this year. So this was just a teaser. And now I'm going to end my talk. Once again, I would like to thank our great benefactors, Dr. Anahita Lovelace and Mr. James Lovelace, and our esteemed Dean of Humanities, Professor Skaberg, and also the director of the center, Professor Rahim Shaigan, and my colleague, Dr. Marissa Stevens. I'd be happy to answer any questions, a few questions, if I'm allowed to take some. Thank you very much.
Diali, thank you so much for this most intriguing presentation. I was mesmerized, as I'm always, when you present this material. I think we have been good with time. We intended maybe to just to not go much beyond noon 15. And I think at the present stage, maybe we should skip the questions and just thank the audience one more time. Thank you, Ali. Thank you very much. I'm just going to make sure that we are thanking our dear audiences. I would foremost like to thank obviously our benefactors, Dr. Anahita Nafisi Lovelace and Mr. Jim Lovelace, for their trust in us, for allowing us to bring this to fruition, for remaining engaged with us, for providing ideas, enticing ones, prompting us to think, rethink our purposes, and to indeed grow as an institution. I would like also to thank the Dean of Humanities for his extraordinary support throughout and always, and for being one of the most supportive deans one can ever imagine having. And obviously my colleagues, foremost Dr. Marissa Lovelace, and all my wonderful colleagues as part of the advisory board. I just wanted to, wrapping up this event, mention a few things. I think the themes that have been animating us today, that have come also more to bear after this confinement, are threesome. That is that the purpose of the Pourdavoud Center is to create content, research, and programming that is open access, that is available to all everywhere, and that it deems itself to be an enabler to be able to partner up with institutions, scholars everywhere, to allow them to present their scholarship, to be allowing them to introduce new fields of inquiry, and organize on their behalf, if they so desire, events that would benefit the larger scholarly community. Everything that we do from the creation of this website to the establishment of a new series as part of UC Press, to this open access and in due time having abilities to allow others to interact and interfere with it, to the establishment of this archaeological program and website. All of our purposes is to indeed allow the largest dissemination of material around the ancient Iranian world to occur. And this is going to be also the philosophy that will henceforth animate us. It has been carrying us hitherto, and it shall continue to do so. So I would like to thank at this stage. I promised to finish at 12:15. I'm going to do so in time. I would like to thank you all, the dear audiences from across the globe, for having joined us today to partake of these presentations and of our intentions, of our endeavors, of our research agenda for the future. And I would very much hope that I would have the pleasure of welcoming you in our next events, and once the confinement is over, to indeed have the pleasure of your company at UCLA or abroad. Thank you very much. Thank you.